Welcome back, everybody, to Watcher of All Things. My name is Kiki, and this is my podcast where I talk movies, TV shows, and all things entertainment. And today it is episode 103, where I hope you are ready to get boned. Enter the Bone Temple. We are talking 28 years later, the Bone Temple. I can't believe I'm about to say this. It's January, and we are going to talk about a movie that I absolutely loved. How often does that happen? I mean, last year we had it with The Brutalist, but that doesn't really count because that was an expanded, wasn't just in New York and LA, whereas this is a legitimate, true to the bones January, no pun intended, January release. And my God, I can't believe they dropped this in January. We're going to talk about that a little bit today, but 28 years later, the Bone Temple. I really enjoyed 28 years later last year, so this is a great follow-up. But before that, I hope you are all doing well. What a freaking week it has been in Toronto. We had a snowstorm to the point where I was told to work from home an extra day this week because it was just unnavigable walking conditions, and it was insane. We probably got like 2 feet of snow. It's Friday night now and nothing is clear yet because apparently we just don't snowplow in Toronto, but I still made it to the movie theaters last night. I had a great walk actually to the subway station and then packed house, which I will tell you all about my theater experience today. But also, a couple little things. On the YouTube channel, we have my top 5 favorite movies of 2025 video up. A lot of fun video to make. I'll have another video at the end of the month with my 5 most anticipated movies of 2026. That's going to be a good one as well. Also for today, in this episode, timestamps below. Of course, there is spoilers and non-spoilers. We will stick heavily to the non-spoilers, only what is shown in the trailers or what the plot details are, and a lot of fun stuff to talk about here. I'm really excited to talk about this movie today, guys. I think it is absolutely brilliant. But before that, let's get into the news. All right, our first piece of news comes from Josh Safdie, who himself confirmed that Robert Pattinson was in fact in Marty Supreme. He said, quote, "No one knows this, but that voice, the commentator, the umpire, is Pattinson. It's like a little Easter egg. Nobody knows about that. He came and watched some stuff, and I was like, I don't know any British people, so he's the umpire." And yeah, if you watch the clip, it's actually amazing how, keeping in mind, it's Robert Pattinson. Sounds exactly like him. He's not doing a silly voice. He's not trying to disguise it at all, but I'm kind of hoping that Robert Pattinson's in Josh Safdie's next movie, or maybe Benny Safdie. I don't know. I think Benny Safdie could do something really interesting in his next work, but Josh Safdie, I hope his next movie is completely different. Like, as much as I loved Marty Supreme, I love Uncut Gems with all my heart. I love Good Times so much. All 3 movies amazing to me. I want him to do something completely random and different, whatever it is. And Robert Pattinson, so good as Connie in Good Time. I would love to see a reuniting film with any of the 3 creators, really. I mean, if the Safdie brothers want to get back together, sounds good to me. I don't know, that's fine, but I kind of like how different their projects are. It's interesting, actually, that both of their movies were sports biopics, but sort of unorthodox sports biopics in some way, because one is more of a story about addiction, and then one is about failure and failing to accept loss, which actually both movies were about failing, accepting losing and accepting yourself as a loser and not living up to the own dreams that you had in your head. So I don't know. Very fun story that Robert Pattinson was actually in Marty Supreme because he was just there watching one day, and then Josh Safdie probably turned to him, "Hey man, will you just be the voice of the announcer?" There's also a bunch of other stuff about Marty Supreme that, like, he was going to be revealed as a vampire at the end. Milton Rockwell, they were fully on board with the idea that he's going to show up in the 80s when they're filming all the Marty stuff, and he's playing ping pong as an older man, and then Milton Rockwell walks in looking the exact same, bites Marty on the neck. That would have been hilarious. Maybe a bridge too far, but I don't know. In our next story, though, this is a big news. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, a show that I talked about 2 years ago now. Oh my God, that was one of my very first episodes. It's crazy that I'm actually approaching 2 years of the podcast, I want to say. Crazy. Okay, but anyways, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, one of the earliest things I talked about on the show, a show I enjoyed so much, recommended it to everyone. Well, it's had a huge production issue with season 2 that hasn't been able to get off the ground. People are leaving the show, coming back, rewriting. Well, it looks like Anna Oyang Mensch, who has done Beef and Severance, has actually taken over as showrunner. So it's back on track to begin filming sometime this year. I'm not sure if it's going to be an anthology series or not. I think the idea is that, is it Mark Edelstein? And who was the girl that was cast in it? I can't remember now, but it's going to be Mark Edelstein as one of the leads, and it is going to be a different Mr. and Mrs. Smith pairing, which I kind of like that idea, that it's all these different people in the program that are working separately Riley, and I don't know, there's so many interesting actors that could really step into the role. It's fun how many anthology series TV shows we're actually getting as well. Like we had True Detective was different pairings every season, right? And then we have Fargo, which was a different story every season. Anthology series might just be like the best way for the new television era that we're in right now, where every season can be a completely different story. It's almost like doing a different show, but within the same techniques and storytelling methods. It's kind of fun. And I don't know, I kind of like the ambiguous ending to season 1 of Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Like, did they make it out? Did they not make it out? To me, it doesn't matter because they finally sort of resolved their issues towards the end. My God, they were so good. Childish Gambino and Maya Erskine in that show. I absolutely loved it. And Wagner Moura, wasn't he in the Mr. and Mrs. Smith season 1? Like, that's a crazy cast, but it's funny how different it would have been had Phoebe Waller-Bridge stayed on. Like, we could have seen an entirely different TV show tonally, but it looks like we're finally getting her Tomb Raider series because we saw Sophie Turner as Lara Croft this week. I think she looks amazing, like pretty dead on to the character. I saw a weird tweet from GameStop that they're like, not my Lara Croft, and it's like, all right, shut up. Shouldn't you be ripping people off when they're trying to return games now? But anyways, very happy that Mr. and Mrs. Smith back on track with a great showrunner that has been part of Beef, Severance, 2 great shows that I have loved so much. Beef season 2 also coming out this year after what feels like a long time waiting. I want to say 2 years, and a really great cast in that show. I think that's going to be absolutely hilarious. Loved Beef season 1, another great show that's returning this year. But let's move into our next story. Hans Zimmer is set to compose the Harry Potter HBO series original score. So he's set to do the score with Bleeding Fingers musicians Cara Talve and Anje Rosman. Here's what Hans Zimmer had to say. The musical legacy of Harry Potter is a touch point for composers everywhere, and we are humbled to join such a remarkable team on a project of this magnitude. The responsibility is something that myself, Cara, and Anje do not take lightly. Magic is all around us, often just beyond reach, but as in the world of Harry Potter, you simply must look for it. With this score, we hope to bring audiences that little bit closer to it whilst honoring what has come before. I mean, look, oh God, I have such complicated feelings with Harry Potter now because I loved the movies growing up. Never read the books, so I guess that's a little bit less credit to J.K. Rowling, but obviously I fucking hate J.K. Rowling with all of my guts. I find her so goddamn annoying, bigoted, disgusting. She's such a toxic waste of a human being that I cannot stand her. I don't want any of my money going towards Harry Potter or J.K. Rowling. Why do you have to be behind one of like the most fun series that I loved growing up, and now I'm like curious to see the TV show? Oh, but J.K. Rowling's involved, and it's like separating the art from the artist, but that's harder than you would think. I mean, now watching The Pitt and seeing Noah Wyle, who I read some personal things about Noah Wyle, very interesting guy, and now watching The Pitt, I'm like, oh, I don't know anymore. But now watching Harry Potter as well, same thing, like whole new light kind of, or whole other filter that's been added on to this, and it's just very difficult to get past that when I just have such personal issues with someone and then I'm watching their IP. But at the same time, I don't know, this new Harry Potter series is just another way for J.K. Rowling to make a boatload of money like she has. As for Hans Zimmer, I mean, he's gonna have another iconic thing under his belt. He's done Bond, he's done Dune, he's done Batman. Jesus Christ, like what's he not done? He's done a bunch of Christopher Nolan movies, obviously. He's doing this now. Like, it's just, his resume is absolutely stacked. He did Gladiator, of course. He's done Pirates of the Caribbean. Like, it's just seeing Hans Zimmer live in concert, the amount of iconic things you're probably seeing from over the course of his career is genuinely astonishing. Like, he's one of the biggest composers of all time. And for Harry Potter, like, having your films be composed by John Williams and then the TV show Hans Zimmer, I mean, what a matchup. You have two of the greatest composers of all time, maybe the two greatest composers for film scores of all time, doing both of the adaptations. That's a very good batting record and incredibly good. I think season 1 of the show comes out this year because it's a season per year. Is that how they're doing it? Are they filming a season every year at least? This is crazy. If we do get a Harry Potter series every year, it's going to be the only TV show in recent memory that I've watched where every single year we get a new season. Whether The Pitt comes back for season 3 right away next year, that would be another one. But other than that, I'm used to TV shows coming back every 5 years and being like, wait, what happened in the last one? Having to catch up, and it's like long awaited sequels for films or TV shows. But interesting news. Hans Zimmer, as well as the other two from Bleeding Fingers, going to be working on the music for that show. No doubt that's going to be a very good soundtrack, and what could be a good show could be terrible. I have no clue. But our next story, a Game of Thrones sequel series is being explored. Now, when I say that, this is a straight up sequel to the regular Game of Thrones series. So the story is still being decided, but according to the Hollywood Reporter, there is a possibility it may be focused on Arya Stark. After regular Game of Thrones, we've of course had House of the Dragon, and now there's actually a new one starting on January 18th. Actually, it's the Night in the Kingdom, the Night in the Seven Kingdoms. I'm not sure what it's called because I'm not a Game of Thrones fan. I have not watched the regular series. I got halfway through season 2 and then I gave up because that was the night the series finale aired, and my brother was like, it's absolutely horrible. And I was like, I don't know if I want to continue with this and then be disappointed by a series finale, but we have a potential sequel on our hands, and it's interesting how since the original, we've had House of the Dragon, the Seven Knights one, we've had everything except George R.R. Martin writing the actual books that he said he was going to write. It's one of the marvels of my lifetime that I am so confident we will never get an answer to. I don't think George R.R. Martin is ever going to write the actual sequels that he's been promising, or that they've even joked about in films and television, like Logan Lucky, the film with Daniel Craig and Adam Driver. They literally make a joke about all of the inmates wanting the next 2 Game of Thrones books, but the warden has to say, well, actually, they haven't come out yet. And then one of the inmates jokes like, that can't be true. George R.R. Martin promised that he would deliver them in the fall of whatever. And he's like, yes, I know, but the show has actually moved past the books. And it's a hilarious scene, but very interesting that HBO is still cashing in on Game of Thrones and really is IP mining it, and they see it as their strong franchise. I don't blame them. I mean, Game of Thrones, one of the most successful franchises of all time, and then their 2 creators, or their TV creators, said, yeah, we're going to go do Star Wars. Then they got fired from that because Game of Thrones went so poorly. Now they're back at Game of Thrones, or they're not doing anything. I don't even know. Are they in charge of the new shows? I have not followed up on this as someone that is not a fan, but I really wonder how many Game of Thrones spinoffs are we going to get in our lifetime? Is HBO just going to keep on cashing in and cashing in and cashing in? I'm not sure, especially if Netflix buys Warner Brothers. They own Game of Thrones. That's just another IP that they have under their belt. But let's move into our final story before we get into our deep discussion of 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple. We have our official confirmation that Kathleen Kennedy is retiring. She is leaving Lucasfilm, like we had reported last week, but some updates that she gave on the future of Star Wars films. Here's a few little bullet points and then we'll dive into them. James Mangold's film is on hold but has an incredible script. Donald Glover has turned in a script for a Lando movie. Simon Kinberg is actively working on a trilogy of films that Dave Filoni and Lewin, what's her name, that it's the other executive producer, are very on board for. Taika Waititi turned in a script for a film she calls hilarious and great. She also confirmed that The Hunt for Ben Solo script is on the back burner. So let's go point by point there. James Mangold's film, that is a very old film that's about the first Jedi, I want to say, or the very first kind of Jedi Council. That has been put on the back burner. He's very busy as well with other films, but I think it's also a factor of Star Wars deciding what they want to put into film live action. And I think with Kathleen Kennedy moving on, Dave Filoni was probably like, I want to pause everything and reassess what I want this franchise to look like. And Dave Filoni is all about action figures being smashed together, as I always say. So makes sense why his script was put on hold, but then Donald Glover turned something in about another film from a previous character, a legacy character. And then the very worrying one for me, Simon Kinberg is actively working on a trilogy of films that Dave Filoni and the other executive producer, they're on board with, rather, because Simon Kinberg did the worst X-Men movies. He is a terrible writer. I'm very worried about those movies. I think they're going to be absolutely horrific. Taika Waititi turned in a script that's hilarious and great. I don't buy it. I doubt it. Also confirming that The Hunt for Ben Solo script, I mean, that's just disappointing that it's on the back burner because that story actually sounds the most interesting to me, oddly enough, even though the character just died and we would have a return of Ben Solo. I don't care. Steven Soderbergh doing it? Are you kidding me? I'm totally in. How is Disney not jumping on that? I think, and it's strange that Kathleen Kennedy is finally gone. The scapegoat for YouTubers and Star Wars fans and man babies that have been blaming her for years, saying everything is her fault, when realistically, Star Wars under Bob Iger and Disney was always going to turn out this way. They were going to IP mine it. They've done it with Marvel. They've done it with everything that they've taken control of. They're now doing it with live action films of animated movies that are beloved to everyone. How could you seriously look at Star Wars and be like, okay, they're owned by Disney now. What, they're just going to do one movie every 10 years or something like that? Or they'll do just a trilogy? Especially with the expansion of Disney Plus. This was always going to be the number one scenario, or most possible scenario. So who knows really with Kathleen Kennedy stepping away, what the future of Star Wars is going to be. I mean, are we going to get all of these Mandoverse films? Or I know that they were doing a Mandoverse crossover film, but then Dave Filoni put it on the back burner because we got The Mandalorian and Grogu, so that's not happening. But as for all of these movies, not a ton of them sound attractive. I would say the James Mangold one and then The Hunt for Ben Solo are what really intrigued me. Other than that, I don't really care about a Lando Calrissian movie. I don't care about Simon Kinberg doing Star Wars. That just sounds bad to me. But as for Kathleen Kennedy, I mean, she's had some insane producer credits under her belt. Don't forget, like, didn't she do Jurassic Park? She's definitely an icon. She's a legend. She's going to go down in history as like one of the biggest producers of all time. But I think that's where I'm going to wrap up the news for this week. Reminder, timestamps below. We have the non-spoiler and spoiler section for 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple. It's going to be a lot of fun. So let's get into our first great movie of the year, 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple. 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple is a 2026 horror film coming in at 1 hour, 50 minutes, a nice tidy runtime. It is directed by Nia DaCosta, written by Alex Garland, who wrote the previous film and is writing the third one with Danny Boyle. Has a budget of $63 million, so same as the first one, roughly by like a $3 million difference. I mean, that's a good budget. It's healthy for a horror movie that has tons of action and big set pieces. $63 million, not too bad. Reviews are currently very positive, 7.8 on IMDb, 93% on Rotten Tomatoes, 4.0 on Letterboxd with a 4-star mode, although it's still very early. Like, I'm recording this Friday night. Usually things are more set in stone when it comes to review scores after the weekend, but the synopsis for 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple. Dr. Kelson finds himself in a shocking new relationship with consequences that could change the world as they know it, and Spike's encounter with Jimmy Crystal becomes a nightmare he can't escape. The film stars Ray Fiennes as Dr. Ian Kelson, Jack O'Connell as Sir Lord Jimmy Crystal, Alfie Williams as Spike, Aaron Kellyman as Jimmy Inc., G. Lewis Perry as Samson, Emma Laird as Jemima, Sam Locke as Jimmy Fox, Robert Rhodes as Jimmy, Ghazi El-Rufi as Jimmy Snake, Maura Bird as Jimmy Jones, Connor Newell as Jimmy Shite, Louis Ashbourne Circus as Tom. Oh my god, we got a Nepo baby in here. I thought I recognized him. Gordon Alexander as Jono, Mirren Mack as Kathy, and David Stern as George. So tight little cast. It's not that big. It's really the Jimmys, Dr. Ian Kelson, Samson, and Spike. That's it. But let's just get into my initial thoughts about 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple. How are we getting such a great movie this early in the year? I thought this was fantastic. I had such a phenomenal time with it, just like the previous one. I think it's just on par with the last one. I loved it just about as much because this is a fucking dynamite sequel. It's super solid. My audience and theater reaction, I saw this on a Thursday night, 7 p.m. opening night, packed audience, completely sold out, which was really, really good just seeing it in standard. There were a few moments where there was just insane reactions from my audience, like after one big Ray Fiennes moment as Dr. Ian Kelson, my entire audience actually started clapping a little bit, like not a full like applause Avengers moment, but everyone started clapping. And then when someone showed up at the end of the film, a lot of people in my audience started going woo and like cheering and stuff. You could probably guess who. A lot of public knowledge about this film, which like if you've Googled 28 Years Later at all, or if you've watched any interviews, you know the third movie is going to feature Cillian Murphy. There is a third movie planned, so no matter what, there's another one coming. It's literally going to start filming probably by the end of the year, I would say, is my guess. I don't really know. It might be a little bit longer of a stretch because they filmed the first two back to back, and the third one I do think it'll be a couple years. But yeah, it was really fun audience for a horror film of a franchise that's coming out in January. I know it's not making as much money as it did as 28 Years Later last year did, and it's Martin Luther King weekend right now in the United States, but I think it's still critically doing exceptionally well. It's January as well. It's really fun being in a packed audience where people are clapping during the movie and after, cheering when someone shows up. But a January release, incredibly interesting. I do wonder what is the thinking from Sony Pictures and Columbia Pictures. Like what is the idea of, oh, let's put it out in January? Was it just because it's a free weekend where it's like, yeah, let's put a solid movie out that we have a lot of confidence in. Let's just get it out early in the year? Because I was trying to Google like the best January releases of all time today, and it's not a giant list. Like you have to go back all the way to Casablanca, but movie releases were very different in those days. I don't know. It's just I don't really understand the strategy, but let's just run through some of the main players and this talk about the performances, starting with Ray Fiennes as Dr. Ian Kelson. I cannot believe I'm saying this, but maybe my favorite Ralph Fiennes performance. I don't know, maybe I'm being hyperbolic, but he is absolutely magnetic in this. He's huge, he's eccentric, he's hilarious. He is so funny in this movie. He is such a weirdo. I loved it. I loved how Nia DaCosta just wound him up and let him play. Same with Jack O'Connell as Sir Lord Jimmy Crystal. He is maniacal, hilarious as well. So many jokes and so many lines he said just landed in my audience. Everybody just dying laughing every single time. It was so much fun to be in this weird horror movie where all of the jokes that are in it just land perfectly. There was not one single punchline that you could feel not really go over with everybody. And there's so many moments that have like a little bit of humor in them, but they're more serious moments that everybody was laughing at in my theater. It was just such a crazy reaction to the performances because they're just delivering the humor so well, Ralph Fiennes and Jack O'Connell. I mean, Jack O'Connell, one of the most interesting actors in the business right now, in that he is really Hollywood's villain. I want him to be the Bond villain in Denis Villeneuve's Bond film against Callum Turner. I think that could be so interesting. He has the Bond villain energy. You just keep putting him in weird horror movies or action movies as villains and just let him be a freak. I don't care. He's hilarious to watch. Alfie Williams as Spike. I think this movie is a lot less about him, and maybe that a bit of a detractor we will talk about eventually. But as for his performance, what he's actually doing in the movie, I think he's solid. He's not doing anything mind-blowing, but what he is doing, perfectly serviceable, very good. I think he's a lot more interesting in the previous film. But within this film, it's Erin Kellyman that is a newcomer as part of the Jimmies, and she is fantastic as Jimmy Inc. I was really, really, really impressed. I saw her in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the Disney Plus show, and I thought she was really bad in that show, and the dialogue they gave her was really bad. She's very capable, is what I could say. She's also in The Green Knight. She's in Solo. She's in Blitz. She's in Eleanor the Great. She's done other things. She was also in the end of 28 Years Later, obviously, when we meet the Jimmies at the end, but I think this is my favorite performance from her. But as for Chi Lewis Perry, who is playing Samson, now, as the trailers show, Samson is being experimented on by Dr. Ian Kelson, or he might have figured out a cure to help Samson. And that is basically story A of this movie, and then the Jimmies are story B. Well, Chi Lewis Perry is giving a fantastic performance as Samson. I was blown away every single scene he had. The cast is just so good when they're all intertwined and getting to play these amazing scenes out with each other. And the story is just such a perfect continuation of the previous film. I really think writing the movies back to back and filming them back to back was such a good way to start this trilogy, because it feels like we are truly getting one of the great trilogies of our time. Like, this is such a strong first and second movie, and Nia DaCosta just comes in so seamlessly here. I mean, it's a perfect continuation of the previous film, even if it's focusing on some different elements. The first movie being a little bit more about this little island that has no mention here, and being more about like the islander leaving the island and going to the mainland of the UK, whereas there's also the military circling and there's no military mention here, or like the Coast Guards or whatever you want to say. I also think the movie feels a little bit more disjointed at the start of this one, The Bone Temple, or at least it's taking its time to sort of lay the foundation, because we are just meeting the Jimmies really, and we're introducing this new idea of Dr. Ian Kelson and the life that he lives, because the previous movie is not really about him. So I think it does take a little bit time to say, okay, here's the setup, here's what we're trying, so you have to trust the process a little bit. Whereas in the last film, it's clear at the beginning, there's a boy and his father, here's the setup, there you go, let the things play out, and then the ending is the subversion of expectations with his mother dying of cancer. It's very much a straightforward A to B. We have two groups or two different storylines that are going to converge eventually. This movie feels a lot smaller in scope, I would say, as well, or it's a lot more focused energy, while the first one, it feels really grand because Spike has left his home island. He's going to the mainland, first with his father, learning about the infected, then he goes with his mother, has to protect her, meets Dr. Ian Kelson, whereas this one, we're really kind of staying with the same characters. We're not going community to community. There's only one other little place we kind of go to where we meet this family that lives together, but it doesn't feel like we're really exploring a lot of the mainland. It feels like we're staying in the same area, so it's not only smaller in scale geographically, but I think it's also kind of smaller on a cinematic scale, maybe due to the technology, but we'll get there in a bit. I think this movie is just very straightforward in comparison to the previous one. But Nia DaCosta stepping into this franchise, really interesting, because she wasn't pursuing this. She didn't know about the 28 Years Later thing. She was going to take a break after Hedda, which just came out earlier or later in 2025. I saw it at TIFF, but then her agent told her, you're going to want to read this. I think you're really going to love it. And she has said on the record that when she was a kid, she remembers the 28 Days Later DVD being in her house as a 12-year-old. So she does have some attachment to this franchise. 28 Years Later had a great story, performances, and really impressive filmmaking elements, whereas this movie feels like it's really pushing its performances instead. This is much more a movie that is carried by the actors and what the actors are conveying, rather than, Danny Boyle doing these crazy technical things with things that they're inventing for the film with the iPhone, or doing these crazy shots that it's like, wow, we've never really seen that in Western cinema. But The Bone Temple is an actor's film. I really enjoyed that element because the dialogue from Alex Garland, who I think honestly this is his goofiest script ever. He is fully throwing shit to the wall, and it's amazing to read. I would actually be super curious to just read the screenplay because the dialogue is so dynamite. I really enjoyed that element of this being an actor's film because the performers are really getting to run away with it under DaCosta's protection. And the visual difference between 28 Years Later and The Bone Temple, very different looking movies. Obviously, the previous one shot on iPhone with all these crazy rigs on it, crazy techniques as I was talking about, versus this one, pretty standard. It's shot on a Sony YL or something like that. So Sony something. This one much more traditional looking, obviously. And I don't mind that. I like that they do look different and they have different looks. I mean, we had 28 Days Later, 28 Weeks Later, different looking films. I'm surprised Danny Boyle wasn't like, oh, Nia, I'd like you to film with the iPhones instead so we can keep a distinct visual language between the different films. But that's fine that she didn't. I actually think it doesn't matter at all. I did rewatch 28 Years Later the other night, watching it on streaming where it's extremely compressed in quote unquote 4K. It's not 4K. I wish I had the actual 4K disc because it's so much clearer when you watch it on that. I don't know, I'm not crazy about the visuals of the previous one shot on iPhone. I think it's more interesting rather than actually loving that. But this movie, I mean, it's so interesting how this movie grows on the previous film. I mean, is this one of the most successful sequel continuations in recent memory? A real benefit of shooting back to back? I feel like this movie is just so well done after a previous film that was so great and critically received so well by fans and everybody that watched it. Just like so many people screaming out how well Danny Boyle had done. There's so much pressure on this movie, but it just goes away without a hitch. Like, it's just so fantastic to have a sequel that's not a complete blunder or a legacy sequel that's milking it for all it's worth. Now, let's talk about the actual story or the characters and what's happening here other than the big picture things. I've already spoken about how hilarious this film and how the characters are just really bringing so much funny stuff to it, but the Jimmy cult themselves, I mean, they worship Old Saint Nick, who of course is Satan, so they are Satanists. That is a very important thing here, and they have their own religious community where they do want to grow. It's kind of like a Quaker thing or a Mormon thing where it grows from a little group and then it goes to something bigger. They want to be a legitimate religious community. It just happens to be that their religious community likes to skin people alive, murder people, purge their souls, and sacrifice it to Satan. Full on religious group that we have here. And it's really interesting to see the dynamics play out, how Jimmy Crystal, or Sir Lord Jimmy Crystal, whatever you want to call him, Jack O'Connell, played by Jack O'Connell, he really does try to brainwash his group into thinking he is connected to Satan. And how that sort of evolves over time is fascinating. He views death as charity because he is donating those souls to Satan to help cleanse the world. He embraces Satan as his father, whereas his real father, as we know at the start of 28 Years Later, the previous film, was a priest who welcomed the infected into his church and said, like, this is redemption, and sacrificed himself almost, or just kind of sat there and took it, whereas his mother was trying to fight back and told Jimmy to go protect himself. So it's so fascinating to see the trajectory of Jimmy Crystal's life based on how we met him in the very beginning of the previous film, how someone has been turned on by religion or a priest as a father, and he watched his own father die, versus now he's a Satanist and worships the cross upside down. It's really interesting, and they have their own like religious language where Jimmy says, how's that? I feel like that's a Jimmy Savile saying or something like that. Jimmy Savile, if you don't know, Google him, absolutely terrible guy. That's who they base their look on. But Jimmy Crystal, he'll say, how's that, to his cast of weirdos, and they repeat it back. It's almost like the church where you say, the Lord, hear our prayer or whatever, and then you repeat it back. It's so much fun, the dynamic that's going down here. Like I've said a couple times now, this is very much a story A, story B. We have Dr. Ian Kelson working on Samson, trying to understand the whole virus and how it actually works, and then story B is the Jimmies and how they operate within the land, how they're moving around, and Spike trying to escape that group. There's a lot lot of themes at play here. This is a story of understanding and helping, or compassion, versus greed, violence, and cult-like indoctrination. So some of the themes in Bone Temple, while we see them playing out. The first movie, 28 years later, is much more about militarism, with Spike being raised by his father and moved into the community as a soldier, and all the cuts of, the different historical films about soldiers in medieval times and English knights, or whatever you want to call them. And as well, that movie's talking a lot about masculinity and a community distancing itself from the world, as in Brexit and COVID, how the UK has distanced itself from the world. This film, The Bone Temple, I think it's a lot more about kind of myth making, myth maintaining, and religious make-believe because of Jimmy Crystal, how he is trying to brainwash the people in his group to think he is a priest, or he is not a priest, but he's kind of a connection to the afterlife and a connection to Old Nick, as he likes to call him. How do false prophets establish themselves as leaders? Through fear, peer pressure, stuff like that. Another theme is helping the violent and the sick instead of just killing them or washing them away and brushing them off. Showing empathy and compassion, with Dr. Ian Kelson actually taking Samson in as a friend and showing him that care and compassion that he hasn't had as an infected, and not treating people as infected, but instead as patients or people that we can help. A little bit of addiction thematics at work there, I feel like, with Kelson's cure of Samson. Also, can we save humanity? Are we beyond saving? Compassion leading the way. Also, mass psychosis. I feel like that's a big thing here when the world just kind of goes crazy because the infected is sort of a worldwide craze that's now just in the UK. There's a lot of themes at play here. And like the last film, I think the third act is just so amazing in The Bone Temple. It's one of the most exhilarating things I've watched in theaters recently. Up to that point, a lot of the movie is kind of finding its way and working out the dynamics, and you have to be a little bit patient. But upon a rewatch, I think this movie could possibly move up in my ratings. I will reveal my rating at the end of the non-spoiler section, but it's just Ray Fiennes is doing some absolutely wild stuff here. I will say there's a lot less dong in this film. We saw Samson, hanging his 10-inch beast in the last film, basically a third arm, whereas in this film, he's wearing clothing for a little bit. There were some giggles in my theater, like every time he's naked, people just going, Jesus Christ, it's giant, stuff like that. But this is an incredibly violent movie when it chooses to be. I think there's less action in this one, possibly, but when there is, oh my God, it's more torturous action, and Nia DaCosta directs it so well. It feels so gruesome and merciless and just so cruel. It's a really cruel movie with really, really dark overtones, and it's just a very tough watch. I will also say the score feels a little bit weaker. I just rewatched 28 Years Later, the first one, the night before I saw this one, and the score is just absolutely impeccable in that film with the use of boots. The score feels a little bit weaker in this one, the score itself, but the needle drops are fantastic in this movie. We have, Radiohead, Duran Duran, and Ray Fiennes is at the head of so many of the needle drops, and it's just so good how it's in-world music, but then there's out-of-world music as well. I absolutely loved it. So where does the franchise go from here? Well, we've already talked about it a little bit. Obviously, we have a third film coming that will be directed by Danny Boyle, still written by Alex Garland. As for Nia DaCosta, I have no clue what her next project is. Whatever it is, I think Hedda was pretty decent, extremely solid, even if I didn't love it. 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple was phenomenal. I would love to see her do more action or more horror kind of things, I guess you could say. Did she do Candyman? Is that right? I don't know, but honestly, she should do more stuff up this alleyway because this was absolutely fantastic. Let me give you my 2 stars and a wish now for 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple. Star number 1, the film has a real energy to it, a distinct energy that carries its way throughout the entire film that you can really feel. You know when a movie just has a feel to it? 28 Years Later had it. So many great movies had it. This movie has it. I love the energy and the vibration that it's working in. Star number 2, the song choices and goofiness are exceptional. This movie is very dark and gruesome, but it's so goddamn funny. You're gonna laugh your ass off multiple times. My wish, it's very much a focused energy film, but I wish there was a little bit more world exploration or updates with Aaron Taylor Johnson and island updates. Alfie is taking a much more backseat in this film, which we didn't even get to, but Alfie is really not involved in this film all that much. He's in the Jimmies, but I don't feel like we really explore his psyche or how he's feeling about being away from home and what he's going through and stuff like that. The focus is fully on Jimmy Crystal and Dr. Ian Kelson and Samson, which, I'm sure we'll get to more Spike stuff in the third film. I just called him Alfie because his name is Alfie Williams, but I meant Spike. But look, overall, I had an absolute great time with The Bone Temple. It's eccentric, it's hilarious, it's touching, and it's so gruesome. It was fantastic. I'm in love with this franchise. I am such a big fan of all of the 28 films. Seriously, even 28 Weeks Later, I found entertaining, plus my darling Rose Byrne is in it. I am giving The Bone Temple a 4 out of 5. I believe it is probably my third favorite in the franchise, maybe second favorite. I think it's extremely like on par with the previous one for me. I would go 28 Weeks Later at the bottom, then I'd probably go The Bone Temple, then 28 Years Later, then 28 Days Later. I just think 28 Days Later, absolutely fucking phenomenal movie. I love it so much, but it's so close between the new two ones that we've had. I love this so much. I'm giving it a 4 out of 5. Let's move into spoilers. All right, let's talk some spoilers for 28 Years Later. You have been warned. So Spike's introduction to the Jimmy cult was horrifying. Oh my God. My theater, again, had a giant reaction, and I think it's such a great way to just drop you into the film by immediately throwing Spike specifically into the situation. So it's that fight in the pool where he stabs the guy in the leg, and then all of a sudden just it hits an artery and blood sprays everywhere. My theater, I'm not even joking, everyone went, whoa, and freaked out. It's just, I'm very surprised how reactive my theater was to this movie. And so early, right off the bat, with a moment like this, everybody's like, holy shit, that's crazy. Fun when that kind of stuff happens. It's a great time. But I think Nia DaCosta has such a great tempo on screen. And that scene in particular, she's letting Spike really get beat up. And Jimmy Crystal is just sitting over the pool watching them, eventually jumps down. And it's just like such a well-paced introduction. I didn't feel like we're rushing with some crazy action sequence. I liked that we are really going from Spike's introduction and not, 2 weeks after he's been in the group, that we have to actually see how he got into the group and he had to defend himself. And it's a great slow introduction that I really enjoyed, along with Dr. Ian Kelson and Samson are literally BFFs. And, they do drugs, they get high together, they listen and dance to music together. It was just so funny every single time they had an introduction, how Samson would charge at him. He'd put the blow dart up, Samson would stop. Same thing, run up, stop. But then eventually they just are BFFs and Samson doesn't even bother him anymore. He's like, I'm going to trust you. And it's that little bit of like growing humanity in Samson that I think makes this movie work so well, where it's just like little bit by little bit, every scene they have together, Samson starts to show his older self a little bit more. And I love the journey that we go on with Samson. I'll wait a little bit to talk about that because I'm kind of going in order here. But Jimmy Inc., who is played by Erin Kellyman, I love how quickly we see she doubts the Jimmy Crystal, or Sir Lord Jimmy Crystal. It's very good dynamic that is immediately playing in the film, where she is strict by the rules and she says this is how it has to go down, but she's the first one that sort of takes sympathy or empathy with Spike and pities him a little bit and says like, look, I know this is pretty hardcore, why don't you wait outside? It's all good, all the terrible stuff's happening inside, we can wait outside together. And it's just, I don't know, she has a very interesting dynamic that is played out super early in the film, and you can see how it's building and building and building. And she's one of those people that lives in these kind of strict, oppressive, dangerous religious groups that is starting to question the methods of a leader, or question the validity of a leader, or the legitimacy of a leader, which I like. That's just such a fun thing when we have an outsider, Spike, coming into the group, and she doesn't try to sell him on the idea right away, and she doesn't really play into all of the silliness and the goofiness and the cruelty that this group does to strangers or random people. And it's just the brilliance of Alex Garland's script, how well he balances that dynamic of the Jimmy group with the ones that are super hardcore, will just do anything for each other, are best friends, and really believe everything Jimmy Crystal says, whereas Jimmy Inc. is on the other side of the sort of dial, you could say. Speaking of dials, there's a great Spinal Tap reference in this where Ray Fiennes says, let's turn this up to 11. But the Jimmy group, I think Alex Garland is just balancing it well with the extremely devoted people, the newcomer that's unsure of what's happening, and then we have Erin Kellyman's character who goes along with what the group is doing and understands what they're doing, but isn't really sold on it based on an ideological level. I think she's much more just with this group for survival purposes, is how I read her character. And the barn scene really sells all of that so well. I mean, we have a great introduction, like I said, with Spike's introduction to the group, really, where he has to kill his way into earning a spot in the group. But the barn scene is where I really felt this movie start to cook. No pun intended. That's a really dark pun. But the barn scene from the shirts and pants undressing where they're literally peeling their victim's skin off like a shirt. Everyone in my theater, once again, very reactive theater, everyone was like, whoa, and making noises. You know, the shirts and the pants undressing to the woman upstairs, swinging the hook down and nailing the girl in the head that's about to kill Andy Serkis's kid. It's just the chaos that ensues after that was so well done. The directing in particular, I feel like we're never losing sight of who's doing what or what's happening to certain people. And no matter what, we really know who has what injuries, who is burning right now. The practical effects are really good. You can see the people wearing the fire resistant suits and burning underneath with Vaseline sprayed all over them. That's just classic movie magic, which I love. And then you have, you know, Aaron Kellyman and Alfie Williams sitting outside as their characters, and they're just like, oh, what's going on in there? And Jimmy Ink is like, well, usually there's a lot of screaming, but not that kind of screaming. And then just burst through the door, someone literally on fire, burning alive. And it's just insanity. Just that's when I really felt the movie turned up to 11 after a lot of sort of compassionate, slow discussion scenes, dialogue heavy stuff throughout the start of the movie with little bits of action and violence here and there. But after that point in the film, it felt like this movie just got weird and crazy, and I love it. It's a really inciting scene, I think. Samson, and let's actually talk about his, you know, character involvement here. I said in the non-spoiler section, yes, Dr. Ian Kelson gets a cure, and he reverses the process successfully through morphine and a drug cocktail, I guess you could say. I'm curious where that's going to go in the next film, if it is going to be a case of Samson tries to go to a bigger town and says, I was infected, I'm looking for a doctor to study me, or where could this possibly go from here? I mean, it's just so fascinating how slowly we get the creeping towards his first words, and I like how restricted it was, that we only hear the word moon from him. And his flashback, I absolutely loved that flashback scene where we see him as a child, as an adult, then he says, I don't have a ticket, but then it flashes back to, or it flashes forward back to normal Samson in regular day after he has recovered from being infected, and then he just gets attacked by an infected horde and literally has all of his strength on the line and still has to destroy all these infected. I love that he's just a huge bulking guy. There's so much about this movie that I love, but I love that he's just a giant dude throwing the infected off him, tears the head out of people in the spine. It's just absolutely disgusting, but the attention and the care and the compassion that is given to Samson's storyline in this film is incredibly beautiful. I found so much rewarding storytelling and dialogue and little hints and movements every time he's on screen. It's just like little things where you can see his eyes moving around and you can see the understanding slowly coming, and little noises that he's making or little affirmations that he's giving to Dr. Ian Kelson. It was just really gorgeous to witness, and I loved it so much. And then we have, you know, where we leave him with the final act, Jimmy literally calling out to Samson because he's hallucinating and thinks he's the devil, his real father, whereas Samson is just coming to take care of Dr. Ian Kelson and melt his body. And I just want to say there's a really great shot when Dr. Ian Kelson has died. He's laying against his bone temple and he has the dark eye makeup on and he looks like the rest of the skeletons because he is bald. Great visual storytelling from Nia DaCosta, who is, you know, establishing he's dying amongst those who he has spent all this time to, and now he is part of his own monument. Just a really tender and loving moment. And his death in general, I have to say, I was shocked by it. When he got stabbed by Jimmy Crystal, my jaw actually dropped, like my mouth fully opened, because I did not see that coming. I thought they were all going to gang up on Sir Lord Jimmy Crystal because they were going to realize he's a fake, or Dr. Ian was going to maybe expose him and be like, well, now you all have to turn on your leader and you're going to listen to me or something like that, and try to get them to be non-violent in the future, or whatever it might have been. Maybe he could have swayed them to be like, oh, this is the real way to purify souls, by bringing the dead here and we burn their bodies and pay tribute to the lives that we've taken, or something along those lines of it. But I think all of the chaos that ensues after that, after he's given this just outstanding performance, first of all, was just so unbelievably metal. It's one of the craziest sequences, putting on a full-on production as Satan. That's where my audience clapped actually after the song finished. Most of all, even with Spike sort of taking a back seat the entire film, I think it was really important that he was the one that killed Jimmy Crystal, and he was the one that, you know, stuck the blade in, and that was a surprise to me as well. I figured that's how it was going to end, but after he killed Dr. Ian, I was like, oh, maybe this is going to be a bad ending where Spike is still stuck with the Jimmys, and then we see Jim in the next movie have to go up against them and try to hunt them down, or something along those lines. I don't know. It's just I wasn't expecting such a clear-cut ending where Spike and Jimmy Inc. run away. They manage to escape after paying tribute to Dr. Ian. Samson is now on his own as just a kind of recovering human being, which I found really touching. I'm excited to see where it goes in the next film, because let's talk about the great final scene. We get Jim and his child. They're having sort of a school lesson, and it's actually a really funny scene. It's lighthearted. It's nice seeing, Cillian Murphy be happy in a film, I want to say. I feel like he never plays happy people, whereas he actually seems very delighted, and I'm excited to see him play a bit more of a hero role in the next film. So, they're studying the house, and he makes that great joke like, well, they might put it on the exam and then you can talk about this. And she's like, Dad, you make the exam. Then we hear this kind of shouting, and it's Spike and Jimmy Inc. running towards the house. They ask, do we help them? And Jim says, of course we help them. Smash cut to the credits. I thought that was fantastic. Like, yeah, just a simple little tease that we're going to get more of this. This is what the story's going to be. It's going to be Spike and Jimmy Inc. What was her real name? Was it Kelly? I think something like that. Kelly. And I liked it. It's just a clear cut ending. I think the third act of this film is absolutely phenomenal. There's so much I loved about this movie, even if it's not as clean on a character arc level as the previous one. But I think we're focusing the characters a little bit different in this one, and Spike isn't so important to this film in comparison to Jimmy and Dr. Ian. But that's all I got for spoilers. I gave it a 4 out of 5. 28 years later, The Bone Temple. Go and see it in theaters if you haven't already. I loved it. Let's get into what else I watched. Alrighty, what else I watched? Well, I have 2 books, 6 TV shows, and 4 movies. Let's, of course, jump into the books up first. I finished Batman Detective Comics Volume 2, Scare Tactics. A really great series. Like, I'm actually having so much fun with the New 52 Batman stuff. I'm now on Volume 3, which is Emperor Penguin, so it's much more of a Penguin-based story, because in a lot of Batman stories, of course, the Cobblepots are an establishing family of Gotham City, just like the Waynes. That's a very popular thing. So it's fun to see that played out a little bit. I'm about 2 issues into Volume 3, so that will be this weekend's read. But let's move into the TV shows right away. I have 6 total to talk about, starting with The Pitt Season 2. Another really great episode. I mean, Dr. Mel, I'm just feeling awful for her every single episode. I feel so sad that she is upset about her deprivation. Is that what it's called? Deprivation? No, what's the law term? Or I don't know. The law term for the case that she has going. And, so many of the doctors are like, oh yeah, I've had a court case, don't worry about it. I'm really enjoying everything with Dr. Langdon, Santos. I mean, just every character is so deeply written, so wonderfully written, and feels so complex and relatable. But I'm excited that we have 15 weeks total of The Pitt, because it is 15 episodes. So we're going to be going till like end of April, I believe. But after that, my girlfriend finished the book Normal People and convinced me, or she didn't have to convince me very harshly, or she didn't have to really convinced me to rewatch the show with her. She hasn't seen it before. I'm rewatching it. I loved it the first time I watched it. I was obsessed with it. I watched it one night. I got home from my friend's apartment after we were watching hockey or whatever, and I started it at midnight. I finished it by about 4 a.m. and I could not stop. All 12 episodes I had to run through. Fantastic television show. So we've watched episodes 1 to 4. Right now, it's mainly when they're still in high school, then they finish. And the last episode we watched was the first college episode. Heartbreaking. Oh my God. I mean, Paul Mescal, I still maintain it's probably his best role in my opinion. After Sun, I don't know. Oh, it's tough. I don't know. Maybe After Sun, but he's just so good. And the same with Daisy Edgar Jones. I think she's fantastic in this show. They are just a power couple in the series. They're so good. Then we have started another season of Survivor. We're back on the Survivor train because my parents got Paramount Plus. So we're watching Survivor season 16, fans versus favorites. We are going to try and watch all of the previous seasons of the contestants that are going to be on 50 before season 50 starts. So far, we're 7 episodes in, so it started with the fans versus the favorites, and this is a great iconic season 16, because Eric's on there, Parvati's on there, Amanda Kimmel's on there, Jonathan Penner's on there, Suri is on there. There's just so many blind sides and, hard fights, and it's crazy. And I also like the fans on the show that are actually playing, like Eric, of course, is iconic because the Black Widow Brigade took the idol from him or asked him to give up immunity necklace, and then they sent him home by blindsiding him. Really fascinating dynamics at play. It's still very early, so I'm curious how Parvati really manages to get the win in comparison to everyone, because she wins fans versus favorites. I'm excited to keep watching. After that, we have Fallout episode 4 and 5, where the Ghoul and Lucy, I finally remember her name, are really coming to butt heads, and to the point where she kills the Ghoul. I'm loving season 2 of Fallout. I find it extraordinarily entertaining. I really like, his name's Rory Scovel. He's a comedian, and he plays the guy that was friends with the Steel guy in the first season, but then he turns into a ghoul, and he's a ghoul in season 2, but now he has to join the Brothers of Metal or whatever they are, the Brothers of Steel, and it's just, he's hilarious. Every scene he's in, I find myself just dying of laughter because he is so goddamn funny. So I'm all caught up to episode 5. We have Lucy, who's been captured by her father because the ghoul was actually bringing her in as part of a deal. I really think the performances are great from Ella Purnell as Lucy, and Walton Goggins is just fantastic as the ghoul. The final thing in TV shows that I want to talk about, the Golden Globes. I made a shorter video on my social medias if you want to hear very concise thoughts, but let's just talk through the Golden Globes a little bit. It was a pretty unsurprising night, I want to say. One battle after another, kind of sweeping everything that it could with, or at least not in acting, but it got supporting actress with Teyana Taylor, which I found very surprising. I wasn't sure which way that was going to go, but I think she's kind of nailed on for the Oscar now, in my opinion. Then Stellan Skarsgård getting Best Supporting Actor was a delightful surprise to me, because those two in particular for the supporting actors would be my pick. I think they gave the best supporting performances of the year, other than Benicio del Toro and Sean Penn. I think they were great too, but it's just like Stellan Skarsgård doing something else completely in that movie, sentimental value that is just mind-blowing, out of this world. As for lead actors, of course, Timothée Chalamet won. I was very surprised that he won. I thought Leo would maybe get it. I don't know. I didn't think it would be so clear-cut possibly this award season for Timothy's Oscar. I really thought it would be a battle. I mean, we still have Wagner Moura, who won the Best Dramatic Lead Actor, because at the Golden Globes it's split into musical comedy. Then we have drama in the other category, and on a film scale. And for lead actress, Rose Byrne won, which was the highlight of the night for me easily. I had no clue that was going to be the way that was going to happen. I think we actually have a possible race in lead actress. I don't know. Rose Byrne has picked up so many awards recently for her role that it's like maybe it won't be so clear cut for Jessie Buckley. Maybe some people are going to be in Rose Byrne's corner because it's a small little A24 film that has Conan O'Brien, A$AP Rocky, directed by the woman whose husband was on Marty Supreme and Good Time and Uncut Gems. And it's just really interesting how If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You is picking up some momentum behind Rose Byrne, and maybe she gets an Oscar win. I don't think she will. I think it probably will be Jessie Buckley. She's absolutely going to be nominated, but getting the win, I don't think so. I think it is a little bit of a bridge too far. And then One Battle After Another winning Best Picture, or that's a musical or comedy, and Hamnet taking drama. A lot of people were surprised online. They figured Sinners might get it, but I think Hamnet was much more my pick, because to me this year, I think most likely Best Picture goes to One Battle After Another, with Hamnet just behind it. And then in third, I have Sinners. I think that's kind of going to be the pecking order. I might do like a power rankings or something like that, like the Big Picture does, or House of Cinema. They just did a top 10, like we have to pick 10 to 1 and who's the most likely, who's less likely. I think it's One Battle After Another in the lead, and the Golden Globes just kind of cemented a lot of my predictions for the Oscars. I'm going to really try and wait and watch as many of the Oscar nominees. Obviously, I have a lot of animated films and then all of the documentaries and shorts I have to watch, so it's going to be fun. After the nominations are out next Friday or next Thursday, I'm going to spend time all the way to March 15th watching as much as I can. I'm going to try and watch it all by actually mid-February as much as possible, because some stuff is just impossible to see in Canada. And then I'm going to do my Oscar prediction video to drop probably like February 28th or 27th. We'll see how it goes. But the Golden Globes, I thought the production and the actual show itself was horrific outside of Nikki Glazer's wonderful hosting. I think she's hilarious, but I mean, cutting score to the commercial break where Ludwig Göransson wins yet another award, sort of insulting, extremely embarrassing, but that's all I got for TV shows. Let's talk about some movies. First up, I got to show my girlfriend Some Like It Hot, Billy Wilder's film from 1959, which is a very strange connection for me to this movie, because as a kid, I used to watch this movie with my parents all the time on DVD. A very random movie, and it's like quite mature watching it, but it's just old school classic Hollywood with Jack Lemmon, Tony Curtis, Marilyn Monroe. It's just so great. It's absolutely hilarious. I was actually surprised how much my girlfriend loved it. She gave it 5 stars on Letterboxd, which was very funny, but I haven't watched it probably in 15 years, and I was very curious how adult me would find it, but it's charming, it's hilarious, it's really smart, and in 2025, where so many people are trying to come down on the trans community, I feel like it has such an interesting relationship with gender and clothing and like masculinity and femininity, and there's so much respect for these two men that are dressing as women, but one of them is actually kind of really embracing it, and you almost see a new form of gender coming out for him, and it's really gorgeous. I think Jack Lemmon is fantastic in this movie, and I'm going to try and watch The Apartment, which is another Billy Wilder film that a lot of people say is his best film ever, but I gave Some Like It Hot. I sort of hovered between 4.5 and 5, but I'm going to give it 5 because the little bit of nostalgia just pushes it to the end. I think it's a fantastic film. I watched it on my Criterion Blu-ray as well, which I just got for Christmas. That was pretty cool. After that, I watched It Was Just an Accident, Jafar Panahi's new film that is probably going to be nominated at the Oscars. So a little bit of Oscar catch up this week. I thought it was brilliant. I mean, it's a hilarious story, but it's incredibly dark and grimy and really scary and terrifying in some ways. I vaguely knew what the story was going into it, that it was someone that recognizes a former soldier that had imprisoned them or member of the Iranian regime that had imprisoned them and decides to take action. But I didn't know that it's actually a group of people that were imprisoned by that guard who are all teaming up and deciding what they should do with him. So it's like a little bit of a dark comedy, but I actually think it's shedding a lot of light on Iran and how civilians are treated in comparison to the regime, I think is what they're called, like the regime in full capital letters. It's so good. The performances are fantastic. I mean, it's this movie about life after atrocities and life after terrible things have happened, like a Quo Vadis Ada, sort of the Bosnian film that came out a few years ago with the Srebrenica massacre, where Ada goes back to her apartment at the end of the film and walks past a general that has actually been living in her apartment since murdering her husband and her children during the war. And it's a film like that where it's like, after these atrocities, where are these monsters just walking, and where are they among us, the ones that have been free? It was a fascinating watch. I gave it 4 stars. Definitely it's going to be prevalent at the Oscars, whether it's in Best Picture or it's in Best Foreign Film. I'm not sure. But after that, Richard Linklater's Blue Moon. I mean, Richard Linklater having a very interesting year. The fact that at the Golden Globes he was actually competing against himself in Best Musical or Comedy. I liked Nouvelle Vague enough at TIFF. I thought it was okay and like entertaining, a little bit of a straightforward story. I found Blue Moon a lot more captivating, even if it's not presenting its ideas as committed as it could be, or it's not as committed to everything as possible. And I also think, it's trying to make Ethan Hawke look shorter than everyone else, but it looks very wonky in parts where you can tell there's a moment where someone looks like they're really small and it's another actor that's not meant to be small, but it's because the set has been built bigger, or I don't know if he's just using camera angles or they're actually building the set bigger to make Ethan Hawke look small, but it didn't all quite come together for me, but I still had a really good time with it. Ethan Hawke is fantastic in the film, but it's interesting how, Richard Linklater's 2 films this year have been about the beginning of amazing artistic chapters. One of them is told from this perspective, Godard, I believe, in Nouvelle Vague, right? And it's he's one of the pioneers of the French New Wave, versus Lawrence Hart, who's the narrator of Blue Moon, is seeing his creative partner of 25 years or whatever move on without him, and they go on to this great success with Oklahoma. It's a fun little juxtaposition of the 2 films, of watching a new chapter in art history move on from our heroes versus a successful launching versus being forgotten behind by society. So I thought it was pretty decent, a fun little addition that's in Richard Linklater's impressive filmography. I gave it 3.5 stars. But the final film of the week, 28 years later, I just rewatched it before The Bone Temple because I wanted to refresh myself on my feelings of it and really give myself a clear runway into The Bone Temple last night, which I think really paid off. I still think it's incredibly solid. I really want to get the Steelbook for 28 years later because it's a gorgeous cover. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I think it's just as good as The Bone Temple, if not a little bit better. But as for this week, I have some stuff coming out. I got sent a screener for Dead Man's Wire that I'm going to watch. Going to try and watch The Rip. Tonight, actually, I might watch The Master and continue my PTA filmography watch through. I'm going to try and start Task. Going to watch a bunch of Normal People, watch a bunch of Survivor, but lots of stuff happening. But for now, that has been what else I watched. And in fact, I think that's going to do it for episode 103, 28 years later, The Bone Temple. I can't believe we're coming up on 2 years of Watcher of All Things. That's absolutely insane. I've learned so much, and this was another very fun episode. I've had such a blast talking about this movie. It was a great time. Go and check it out. But as always, please rate and review the show 5 stars wherever you get your great podcasts like Watcher of All Things, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Acast. We are, of course, an Acast-produced show. You can drop a comment right underneath the episode on Spotify. What are your 5 favorite films of 2025? What'd you think of 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple? How would you rank the 28 films or 28 years? What are we calling this franchise? 28 Days Later? 28 Later franchise? I don't know. If you're on the YouTube channel, hit like, subscribe, comment all that stuff down below, as well as hitting the notification bell so you know every time there's a new podcast episode, new video dropping, all that good stuff. The YouTube videos will keep coming this year. I actually just got an iPhone 17 Pro, so I could film a goddamn movie if I wanted to. If you want to get in touch with the show, you can email me, watcherofallthings@gmail.com, and find me on social media. Instagram and Threads are just at watcherofallthings. The TikTok account is at watcher.of.all.things. I post videos on social media every single day, so go check all of that linked below, as well as my personal Letterboxd account, KikiJ70. That's KIKIJ70. I use Letterboxd religiously. I review every single movie I watch, so check that out. Follow me on there, drop a comment under one of my reviews that you found me through the show, and I will follow you back. Let's build a little community. Next week, we have possibly a dud of a film, but I don't know. I hope they prove me wrong. Starring Rebecca Ferguson, Chris Pratt. It's a little movie called Mercy. I don't know. This might be the most January of January films possible, but if it's bad, I'm excited to talk about it. If it's good, I'm excited to talk about it. But right now, thank you all so much for listening, for the love that I get every single week from you guys. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one.